Let me ask about picking up on another thing that Maren had raised, which is A2AD environments. There's a lot of talk about that, particularly with China and Russia, their ability to build defensive bubbles around their homeland. And I realize that the CNO does not like A2AD, so because it sounds a little too restrictive maybe on our operations, but I wanted to ask about what that means for the training, organization, and doctrine of the MAGTF, operating in that kind of environment as opposed to the permissive kinds of environments we've been living in the last, well, really two decades. And many of your remarks have already touched on that, but we can start with General Walsh and work our way down.
I'll just start with the, as General Beaudreault said, is the strategy is the most clear strategy that I think in my career since 1989, since the Reagan administration. Clear strategy. So the department is clearly turned in that direction. So the clear strategy is telling us to move in that direction. So I'll just start with the concepts. Concepts drive where we go. It drives our training, our equipping, our manning, how we organize. So with the clear guidance from the NDS, things like littoral operations in a contested environment, signed by the CNO and the Commandant. Expeditionary advanced base operations that is getting very close to be signed by the Commandant and the CNO. And another one, multi-domain battle that we're working on with the Army, is another concept. So the concepts will drive very much where we put our investments, where we exercise to, where we put our wargaming, where we put our S&T. And I will tell you from inside my world, that's driving everything we do. The concepts are unifying for both the service with the Army, SOCOM on the multi-domain battle side, but certainly the concepts with littoral ops and contested environment and expeditionary advanced base operations are driving everything we're doing within the department, all the way down to the operating forces. So I would just start with the concepts is a piece, is a major driver. And I would also say that our Marine Corps operating concept that we really signed, the Commandant signed in the fall of 2016, really put us on the route of march down this path looking at higher end conflict.
Yeah, so none of this happens overnight, right? So where we have been for the last several years, where we aspire to down the road, or where we're being directed to down the road, while certainly Secretary Mattis would like for us to get there more quickly, we are incremental, I won't say incremental change, but certainly we don't wait for CD&I to hand off a perfectly formed concept before we begin to play with it. So for instance, we are exploring ways to where we can at least tabletop and in terrain that is different from what you might immediately identify as an EABO type of environment. How do we do that in other places around the globe? How would that look if we had to do it? And how might we contest those areas differently than purely a force-on-force type of confrontation? So we at TUMEF, we're trying to find slices of these concepts so we can put to work immediately and begin to learn from them now, rather than waiting for everything to be perfected. We know that's going to take some time. And it's the same thing with the force presentation. So we have a lot of folks on the road around the world in TUMEF doing the nation's bidding. And I would like to have more of them at home preparing them for a higher end confrontation. We're working on all that, but it doesn't have, I can't just flip a switch and say, okay, everybody come home, we'll retool you for a high end fight, and next year we'll be good to go. That's certainly not the way it's going to happen. It takes a change in mindset, it takes a change in culture almost to get refocused on the things that are going to matter should we have to fight inside the bubble as an inside force.
So I'll come back to the inside force in just a minute. I mean, I think what's recognized in the NDS is that different than in the past, we may have to fight to get to the fight. You know, that the idea that we have sea control and air superiority from the get-go is an assumption that we're not making anymore. And so when we look at not just EABO, Expeditionary Advanced Base Operations, or the littoral operations in contested environment, from a joint perspective, we're working very closely with the Air Force on their dynamic basing concept, and for the Navy under distributed maritime operations. So when you take the Marine operating concept and start to merge it with the joint concepts, we all recognize that if you can be seen, is to be targeted, is to be killed. And so in a place like the Pacific, it's about distribution of your force. It's the ability to rapidly aggregate and mass at the time and place of your choosing when necessary. It's about decoys and deceptions. It's about low observable properties of modernization of our equipment. It's all of those things. It's about all domain access and assuring ourselves across all the domains: space, cyber, surface, undersea, land. It's about a MAGTF that can be a fleet in being, that can be a land-based MAGTF to support sea control and asymmetry. It doesn't have to be naval against naval. And we look at the procurement of a naval strike missile or a high-mobility artillery rocket system or any kind of multiple rocket system that we might be looking at extended ranges. We can do things in support of a naval campaign that we haven't been able to do in the past. That's the direction we're moving. You add an unmanned capability into that, an unmanned sensor, an unmanned shooter, a networked force, networked to Aegis systems. Now we're talking about a very sophisticated high-end fight where we need to maintain dominance, first of all, in the information space and dominance over the electromagnetic spectrum. If we can do that, that will underpin everything else that we need to do as a force for command and control, from a ship talking to a land-based system, for a manned sensor, talking, you know, being able to relay through an unmanned sensor back to whatever command and control apparatus might be in charge at the time, to include the incorporation of artificial intelligence into our systems, Watson-like capabilities, where the pace of decision-making has to move as quickly as the opportunities reveal themselves. So there will be a lot of machine learning, there will be a lot of movement, a lot of investment in artificial intelligence. We know that the Chinese have made a lot of investments in that area and have some great capabilities. Those are the things that are going to enable this force to be able to fight in a high-end fight. Lastly, on the inside force, so you may see two different MAGTFs emerging, all within the same Marine Corps. There's the constantly forward deployed aspect of the Marine Corps on Navy ships that's going to be inside the adversary's area if they decide to light up their systems one day. We have to be the contact and blunt layer. Someone's got to do the job, and those Marines on amphibious forces, in addition to the rest of the surface Navy or subsurface Navy and air, cyber, is going to deny the adversary the initial capabilities. We will disrupt their plans. We will buy time and space for decision makers in Washington that then can make a decision to be able to surge the force from CONUS. So you're going to see a MAGTF that's operating inside the contact and blunt layer. You're going to see the third layer, the surge force, coming in, and of course the fourth layer is homeland defense, more geared toward NORTHCOM, NORAD, NORTHCOM, ensuring the ballistic missile defense of the United States primarily. So you're going to see a MAGTF that's operating inside, that has to be survivable and lethal, a disruptive and denying force, and then the rest of the MAGTF that's coming in from places like Camp Pendleton or Camp Lejeune or Okinawa, assembling at the right place to then serve as part of the surge layer, as part of the war-winning force that the Army will be deploying.